just want to start off and ask you, what circumstance did the Lord use to reveal himself to you?
The Lord revealed himself to me in many ways and in many circumstances. And there are instances where it stands out in my life that he spoke to me and revealed to me himself. First of all, when we married, I just expected to have children right away, and it didn't happen. And I became very concerned after about 3 years, and God just allowed me to keep waiting, and then is when I really knew that I had to turn to him for that desire in my heart, because I couldn't do anything about it. I was doing everything I could, but he just let me keep praying for a year or so at least, and I knew that Hannah had prayed for a child and that God had given that child to her, and I knew that if I kept praying that he would give me a child. And so I just kept on praying, and we just were about to give up and adopt a child, and then's when it happened. I just suddenly became pregnant, and I knew that God had done that, that he had given me a child. And so from that time on, I just knew that I could turn to God and ask him for the desires of my heart, and he would give me those desires. And so he gave me a son, my oldest son, Rodney, and of course we went on, and I had 2 other children after that very quickly, Sharon and Marcia. And about that time, we were approached to go to Africa as missionaries. And at that time, that was just unheard of for me. I mean, it was just like going to the moon or something. And so I knew we had to pray about it and ask if that was God's will for us. And sure enough, we came to the point that we knew it was his will for us to go to Africa. And so we took off to go to Houston to go to Africa in April of 1960. Marcia was still a baby, just a few months old. And at that time, we were ready to get on that plane and go. But God said, no, you're not ready. And so he put me in his waiting room. It was over a year that we experienced many things that just made me know that God was in control of everything, and that I just needed to be patient.
What kinds of things did he put
First
in your
of all, our son Rodney, whom he had given me a son in the first place, I knew that. He was sick, and we took him to the doctor, and the doctor said he had leukemia. And of course at that time, that was a death sentence. And I knew that, but we decided that we would call for the prayers of the church. And so we did that, and over just a period of about 2 or 3 weeks, we took him back to the doctor, and the doctor said, I don't know what has happened, but he doesn't have leukemia anymore. And of course, we knew what had happened, but God knew that we needed that confirmation of his power and his love for us at that time before we even went to Africa, if we were going to be able to do his work there. So we, the reason we were not able to go to Africa, the visas had been denied. And so we kept waiting, and finally, in the meantime, I found out that my mother had cancer, that she had cancer of the skin, and so they didn't give her more than 3 months to live. So we decided at that time that we would have to go up to Austin to be close to her and help take care of her. She still had a daughter 4 years old, or not quite 4 years old, and a son 11, and so she needed help. So we moved up there, and all this time, of course, we were still waiting to hear something from Malawi, and we never heard anything. And finally, the church that was sponsoring us in Ballinger said, you know, something's going to have to be done. We're going to send you over there to see what's wrong. And so Roland was sent over there by himself to find out why we didn't get our visas. And so he went on over there, and he stayed for 8 weeks, I believe it was. And that was a real tough time for me, that 8 weeks without him, with 4 little children to take care of, because my mother had that little one. And all that time I was just praying and asking God, why? You know, why are all these things happening? We agreed to be obedient to you and to go to Africa, and now it seems like there is some reason we're not supposed to go. And but Roland called back then during that time he was over there and said that he had found out that our visas was laying on the desk of the one in charge of that business there on the bottom of the stack. And he said he didn't know why, but that man told him that we didn't have a place to live there. So he said, if you can get a place to live, then you can come. We'll grant the visas. So he went out immediately and started looking, and he found the mission place that he eventually bought right away, and it was a perfect place. And so he got that arranged and taken care of, and came back to get us. Of course, we stayed there in Austin until my mother died, and then we left about a week later. You know, in looking back, it was so wonderful to see God's hand in all of that, because the property that became available only a week before Roland got there was not available at the time we had planned to go. And the other places, I mean, there was no place that was adequate or sufficient for anything like that. So God intended for us to get that place. And of course, my mother passed away during that time, and if I had been in Africa, I could not have come back to be with her. And so it was just God's hand in all of that. So during that time, we, like I say, we finally got moved over there and settled in. And then he wasn't through testing me yet. I found out about a month after I was there that I was pregnant again, and the doctors had warned me not to get pregnant because there were complications. And so I became very concerned at that time. Foolish me, like the Israelites, I didn't learn my lesson. But I did become very anxious, and because, you know, there was a possibility that this child would need special attention when she was born if her blood needed to be changed. I had A negative blood, and Roland had positive, so that made complications. And then I also had to have a cesarean with all of mine, so that was another concern. But God took care of all of that perfectly. I didn't have to go to Salisbury like they said. They assured me that they were able to fly me to Salisbury so that if the baby needed to have her blood changed at time of birth, it would be possible to do it there. And he took care of everything so well that I've always looked back on that as my best pregnancy. And it was strange, you know, to say that now, but then I was very concerned, and God just took care of all that. And so I can always look back on His faithfulness in those situations and know that wherever I go, my favorite song is "Anywhere with Jesus, I Can Safely Go," and that is true. The fact that God allows us to go through times of testing is for our good and for the building of our faith. I fully believe that. And I know that He will only allow those things that will make us grow in our faith.